Right here on CRN.
You know, bragging never got anybody anywhere. A hen lays an egg and cackles for 44 minutes. A sturgeon lays 10,000 eggs and never lets out a poop. We call it caviar. I'm Barry Farber, and I am going to brag for less than half a minute. I am so proud that I thought to try to get Chuck Morse on our show right now. Chuck Morse, because before this Sterling, this billionaire bigot thing, has a chance to cool off, I want the perspective of an African American who is literally in love with the Constitution. I can't wait for Chuck Morse, who you may know from his many books. By the way, when I read a partial bibliography of the books that Chuck Morse written, you'll say, Barry, we don't need any bigoted billionaire as a reason to be proud of having Chuck Morse on. I agree with that, but the Sterling affair gives you a special edge at this moment. Chuck, welcome back to these proceedings, and I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. As a Jew, I wonder if I would bend my love of the Constitution in order to get a vicious, vulgar anti-Semite. Your turn.
Barry, first of all, it's always a pleasure to be on with such a radio legend as Barry Farber, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a great honor, and thank you, sir. As far as the whole business of the Sterling affair, I think that from what I understand, and I don't know anything more about it than what we all know because it's what we read in the paper, that he had made some kind of private comment to his wife, and that for some reason she reported this to someone, or she told someone, who then told someone else, and eventually it became public knowledge, that he basically told her that he did not want her to be seen at the stadium in the company of a black man, mainly because he didn't want people to think that he was having an affair. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's certainly, even though it's a private conversation, it's insulting for sure. But the idea that this would become this national case that requires the President of the United States to weigh in, and that he would be banned from attending games for the rest of his life and fined $2.5 million and be pilloried in such a way that it's almost like a lynch mob. It reminds me of the old Frankenstein movies when they show people, crowding around the house, with torches at night, waiting to burn them in effigy. There's something about it that is so hysterical that I think that we ought to stand back and pause and look at what this says about where our society is at this point. It's almost a tinderbox.
If I were to have entered an essay contest on what Chuck Moore would feel and say about the Sterling affair, I'll bet you I would have won the weekend in Las Vegas. I just sort of figured that would be exactly your take, and not just because it is exactly my take. We'll get back together after a short commercial break, very short.
Hi, I'm Lynn, and I am totally blind. Like many who are totally blind, I have non-24, a circadian rhythm disorder that can put your sleep-wake cycle out of sync with the 24-hour day. But I found out there's a new treatment available for non-24. It's called Hetlioz Tazimiltian, the first FDA-approved treatment for non-24.
The most common side effects of Hetlioz include headache, elevated liver enzymes, nightmares or abnormal dreams, and upper respiratory or urinary tract infection. These may occur more often in patients 65 or older. It may cause drowsiness, so limit your activity to preparing for bed. Hetlioz has not been studied and it is not recommended for use in pregnant women, children, or people with severe liver problems. To learn more and to hear the full prescribing information, visit Hetlioz.com or call 844-241-2424. That's 844-241-2424.
Hetlioz is now available for non-24. Talk to your doctor today.
Sponsored by Vanda Pharmaceuticals.
Here is a partial roll call of the books by our partner for this expedition, Chuck Morse. The Nazi Connection to Islamic Terrorism, Adolf Hitler and Hajj Amin al-Husseini. Barney Frank and the Law of Unintended Consequences, how the Frank Amendment helped terrorists get legal visas. American Spring Manifesto, Islamo-Communism, On the Jewish Question, Karl Marx, Anti-Semitism, and the War Against the West. The Monkey Trial. Was Hitler a leftist? Acorn, The Art and Science of American Money. Wow, where do you come up with this concept? Every single one makes me want to lock myself away until I read every single one from cover to cover. Try this one, The Elizabeth Warren Fraud. The Elizabeth Warren Fraud. Well, we've got, I promise you, an enriching hour ahead of us. And don't let me leave out the Whig Manifesto. That's part of my case, that here Chuck Morse's opinions are probably more interesting on a measurable scientific scale than any other American. And the opinions of any other American, because he's an African American literally in love with the Constitution. Chuck, 24 hours ago, when the Sterling affair was even hotter than now, I was recalling a boyhood friend, and the night the atomic bomb fell on Hiroshima. You know, we were teenagers. We were too young for the military. We hated the Japanese. And man, the news of the atomic bomb obliterating Hiroshima really thrilled us, except for one of the boys who shook his head, who said, I don't know about this. I don't know whether it's good to have a bomb that can wipe out a whole city. And we thought he was a wet blanket. We couldn't understand. We turned our backs on him and ridiculed him. We thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And of course, all of us have had second, third, fourth, and fifth thoughts about the nuclear weapon. But I think what bothers me is this was Don Sterling's opinion, and that is admitted. Nobody is pretending he did anything. It is his opinion, and I didn't know you could be pilloried for an opinion in America, but I guess that was a different America.
Well, I mean, worse than that, I think it was a private opinion. It wasn't even something that he had said publicly. There's no evidence that he has anything against African American men and women. He's been a long-time contributor to the NAACP. And this whole thing is more than ridiculous. It's the thing that again scares me about it is this lynch mob mentality that this country seems to be descending into. I mean, there's certainly people. I mean, Jesse Jackson is out there waving his arms akimbo and flapping in the wind. I recall him talking about Jews as Heimies and New York City as Heimie Town. You know, not exactly kind comments about Jews, but does that mean the man has to have his entire career wiped out? Does that mean that his life has to be banned for the rest of his life? I mean, what kind of a society are we turning into? That we are at, it's like we're eating our own.
And look at the double standard the spotlights. Apparently, if you are a sinner on the left, you get very quick exoneration and very gentle treatment. But if you are a billionaire bigot like Don Sterling, then it is absolutely, as you point out, merciless. Whatever happened, I thought all America believed and revered that great Voltaire concept of, I may disagree with every word you say, but I'll fight to the death to give you the right to say it.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's what happened to the golden mean of Aristotle? This idea of the open and free exchange of ideas, this sophistic dialogue where you have people take all sorts of positions on an issue and debate it, and that's the whole principle that made up the Talmud. And this is a society and a system that has balance, that allows for unpopular opinion occasionally to be expressed without people starting to go on a witch hunt.
But you've got to have an inner conflict. I mean, to read what this man said about black people curdles the marrow of the bone.
It's just to me, it frightens me personally in a sense as a radio host, because it makes me wonder what it is that I might say next that could be blown up out of proportion and used to destroy me. I mean, if we're going to have a society that's going to play this ugly, then, in a sense, I would ask people to look in the mirror and wonder what might be said about them. Did they ever utter a sentence that could be pulled out? And in this day and age, when we have such technologies as governments that can eavesdrop on our phone conversations and watch our computer strokes, you've got to be careful. Anybody could be completely examined. We're almost transparent now. We can all be, branded anything the government wants to brand us. And, technologies are such now that there are experiments being done on people implanting computer chips into their own skin. This is, these are times when we need to preserve, some basic principles of free speech and the right to speak as you please, and to be accountable for it, but accountable in proportion. It does reflect something that, is going awry when we become so obsessed with something that, frankly, is rather trivial. When, as you mentioned, there have been major things going on in the world. You lived through the Hiroshima bombing. I mean, that's a big deal. When you can bomb and obliterate a whole city. What some guy says at a basketball game is not a big deal.
As a talk host, Chuck, have you ever had the feeling that this new wet blanket of political correctness has damaged the content of your show, where you withheld a comment that might have juiced things up because the world is different now?
Yes. I feel like I'm becoming a little bit more sensorial of myself. Absolutely. It's chilling. It's chilling in the same way that, frankly, Islamic terrorism is chilling. You don't want to criticize anything to do with Islamic societies because they might come on and chop your head off. This is in a sense a left-wing version of that. Now that we have to worry about we've had comments on, in a sense, we won't be able to comment on anything to do with African Americans because we could be told that it's racist. So as a result, African Americans become invisible.
When we get back together, not that we have already done our job thoroughly with the Sterling affair, but I won't let that rest right now because of the overpowering appeal of so many of those book titles. What is the Elizabeth Warren fraud? She might run for president against Hillary Clinton, et cetera, et cetera. We'll be right back with Chuck Morse.
Little Jack Horner sat in a corner of his ransacked apartment, wondering what kind of nitwit steals a futon. Luckily, the Geico Insurance Agency had helped him with renter's insurance, and he got full replacement. Unfortunately, little Jack Horner had to have his stomach pumped. when he ate a 6-month-old Christmas pie. Visit Geico.com to see how affordable renter's insurance can be.